Hi, my name is John Little, and this is the ShockCast for April, Friday the 13th, 2018. A mental disease sweeps the globe, and it afflicts more than just those who believe that the earth is flat. No, it's far more pervasive and sinister than that. It's a disease that has destroyed the peoples and nations throughout history. It reaches into our schools, our homes, and our friendships, and it's a disease that will blind you to the truth. If you allow it to take hold in your life, you will be blinded. I call it the flat earth mentality, but it might be better described as a desire to believe the fantastic in the face of obvious and provable truth. So let's talk about the flat earth mentality. Now, on a side note, Yahoo has been blocking the shock letter. Other email services are labeling it as junk. I might have been making progress in getting them to stop doing that. I will continue my efforts to convince them that the shock letter is not spam. Lord willing, affected users will be able to receive the shock letter without trouble in their inbox as soon as I can get them to change their minds about the shock letter. Unfortunately, if you are affected, I might not be able to respond to any of your emails asking about this. I'm sorry. If they're blocking the shock letter, they're probably blocking me, my personal emails also. After writing An Era of Insanity last week, I was hoping that I could leave the topic of insanity behind. But alas, it was not to be the case. On Saturday, a reader, T2L, left this comment on last week's article. It's from SOTT.net, signsofthetimes.net. 1/3 of millennials surveyed aren't sure the earth is round. A new study, a new generation, she in T2L adds, a new generation has been identified. Generation Forrest Gump, as per DH. I saw it on Monday and promptly went berserk. Here was my response. Again, brace yourself, I was going berserk. What? Even Gump wasn't that stupid. 1/3 of millennials don't know for sure if the earth is a sphere? What? Okay. It sounds like America is regressing back to the Dark Ages, and it is a demonstration of the failures of public school education. And for those of you who believe that the earth is flat, you are a moron. Sorry, but that's the truth. Worse, you are defaming the name of Christ when you claim that the Bible shows that the earth is flat. It doesn't, and you're a moron if you say so. It is an evil thing for someone to give the enemies of God the fuel that they want to damage the name of Christ. If you are a flat earther, you are doing it. That's right, Mr. Earth is flat, you. I don't know if I should keep reading this comment. Anyway, it was going berserk. Worse, flat earthers are more than just drooling idiots. They are also disgusting and lazy. Instead of going to that stupid convention of theirs in Denver, they could pool their money and send someone on a trip to Santiago, Chile to Sydney, Australia on a non-stop flight. I'm frothing at the mouth. But they are too stupid and evil-hearted to do that. They would rather hold the name of Christ up to be mocked than to have their precious and stupid theory be destroyed. Morons! These foul Can you read this? I can't even read this. And evil cretins need to be shipped off to some island where they can't bother anyone. Please, not Taiwan. If you are a flat earther, get on that plane to Sydney or get out of my sight, you moron. Sorry about that rant, T2L, but that hit a nerve. Wah! That definitely, Lord willing, goes in on Friday. And of course, here we're talking. Wah! Yours in Christ, John Little, OmegaShock.com. And by the way, Mrs. Little is laughing over on the comment because she knows exactly what I'm like. Okay. Now that I've had time to calm down a bit, I need to clarify that most flat earthers aren't evil. But some are diabolical, which is of the devil. In fact, I suspect that the leaders of the flat earth movement are engaged in a cynical plan to trick flat earthers out of their money. Yes, money. So, let me double down on the need to warn everyone that flat earthers are holding up Christ to be mocked by the unbelievers, as well as just being stupid. To emphasize, let me put it another way. Our Lord and Savior is being mocked because evil deceivers have convinced drooling idiots to believe that the earth is flat. I have sympathy for drooling idiots and cretins. I really do. I feel sorry for people who suffer from such a low IQ or who have been honestly tricked into believing the impossible. They have my pity as well as my desire to free them from their stupidity. The evil deceivers, on the other hand, who are leading their flock into this error, get an entirely different response from me. Those people will suffer the wrath of God, and I will cheer God on as he rebukes these foul fiends from hell. Please, understand that the Bible does not describe the earth as being flat. And this is the second reason why this belief bugs me so much. The leadership of the flat earthers are deliberately distorting the precious words of God and are teaching their followers to do the same. How dare they do this? I always get incredibly upset when I see people distort the words of God. It is a vile and evil thing to do, and I get horribly upset every time that I see it. I just can't help it. And the list of people who do this is way too long. Lots of us have done this. I have done it. You have done it. But when we find that out, we double our efforts to not do it. And I have dedicated my life to never distorting the words of God, ever. I would rather die. Seriously, I would rather die than distort the words of God. And I mean that with all of my heart. Now, most of you, but only most, agree with me that belief in a flat earth is awful. But you probably don't know how pervasive it has become. Do you want to know how many die-hard believers in a flat earth there are in America? Are you sure that you want to know? Remember, what has been seen or heard cannot be unseen or unheard. So I'm giving you this chance to turn away right now. Okay. So, here is the number of Americans who firmly and absolutely believe and have always believed that the earth is flat. 6 million. In fact, the figure is more than that, and that's not including those who are unsure or tend to agree with the idea of a flat earth. So let's get into the weeds and look at the numbers. On millennials, those who are 22 to 37 years of age, 34% of which either don't know or unsure or are unsure or firmly believe that the earth is flat. 34%. On young millennials, 18 to 24, 4% firmly believe that the earth is flat and have always believed that the earth is flat. On Americans as a whole, 84% believe that the earth is a sphere or round. 5% always thought the world was round, but more recently are skeptical or have doubts. Okay, we're working on you guys. 2% believe that the earth is flat and have always believed that the earth is flat. 52% of flat earthers are very religious. Again, 2% of Americans believe, as a whole, all the Americans, you look, all of them, 2% believe that the earth is flat and have always believed that the earth is flat. The statistics come from a YouGov.com study. Now, with those statistics in mind, here is more. Flat Earther, it's an article from brandwatch.com. Flat Earthers, social data on the wildest conspiracy theory yet. Now, I don't really want to talk about this stupid theory. I don't want to talk about the mental disease that keeps it alive. Or should I say, I want to talk about the mental disease that keeps it alive. The flat earth theory is really, in a sense, irrelevant. It's merely a symptom of a bigger problem. However, there are enough people out there who believe it that before I can talk about the disease, I need to debunk it first. So let's do that. In my article from 2015 called Escaping the Flat Earth Society, which I did not write to talk about the flat earth movement, it was merely, again, the symptom of the disease, I used the following YouTube video. It's from Stefan Molyneux called The Flat Earth Conspiracy Debate. Yes, really. Now, in that above video, Jimmy Montgomery left this cogent comment just a month ago. I would quote, "I was a charter boat captain in the 70s. I had to learn how to navigate without any electronics, just a good watch, compass, and a sextant with some trigonometry formulas. Haven't had a flat earther answer why do I have to plot a rhomb, curved line on a flat map over long distances. Because if I didn't plot a rhomb line, I would miss the Hawaiian Islands by over 100 miles from California. The Mercator maps used in navigation are a projection of a spheroid onto a flat surface. I do not know a single navigator that thinks the world is flat. I think that the people who claim the Bible does teach a flat earth are, and this is the important part, working for atheist organizations to make Christianity look foolish. Saying things like, rockets can't work in the vacuum of space because there isn't anything for them to push against comes to mind. Did you learn anything about physics? For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction." Close quote. I hope that you understand what Jimmy said. You cannot navigate the ocean while believing that the earth is flat. You just can't. It's just not possible. Not if you want to arrive at your destination. Now, I have three more YouTube videos. One is titled, "This is how we know the earth isn't flat." The other one is 10 easy ways you can tell for yourself that the earth is not flat. And then this interestingly titled YouTube video, "The Earth's curvature is tasty." Now, there's also a page that asks an important question. A question for flat earth theorists from logosapologia.org. And then this website. It has a lot of information to wade through, but I think you'll find it interesting if you're wanting to debunk the flat earth lunacy. And it's titled Flat Earth Lunacy from flatearthlunacy.com. It's very simple to find. It's there. Now, here are some bits of proof that pop out of my head every time this topic comes up. To start with, it's the Sydney-Santiago flight from Qantas Airlines. When I first posted my 2015 article on this subject, I mentioned one bit of proof that makes a tremendous amount of sense to me. I said this: Qantas has a non-stop flight from Sydney, Australia to Santiago, Chile, that takes about the same amount of time as Los Angeles to Tokyo. Don't believe me? Check it out for yourself. I'll provide a link. There is absolutely no way that the earth is flat, but there is equally no way that I will ever convince you, because you are in love with your own view of reality if you're a flat earther. Now, I clicked the link that I had provided above, and it says that this flight would take 12 hours and 35 minutes. And it also says that there are 4 flights per week on that route. If the earth were flat, that route would take more than 40 hours, since it would mean that the plane had to fly north, up through North America, and then down the coast of China. It doesn't, and the planes don't carry that much fuel. Well, after writing my article, I received confirmation from a reader about my point that the Sydney-Santiago route was real, and that it proved that the earth was a sphere. That reader's name is Brett. Quote, "John, sorry to read your post and just have to reply. Firstly, I can assure you that planes do fly those routes. How do I know? I fly them. Who has taken these flights and where are the testimonies? Once again, look in my logbook and ask my wife and 2 kids where I disappear to for a few days at a time when I go to work. As for departure and arrival times and distances covered, well, that varies depending on winds, weather, etc. But as I've mentioned, today's flight covered 6,174 nautical miles. Out of sheer curiosity, I watched that YouTube link you posted. The gentleman claimed the Sydney to Chile flight doesn't actually happen. I would be embarrassed to have shared that 100% incorrect video. I do apologize if this comes across as arrogant. However, things like this don't help us or give us any credibility. In fact, when it comes to spreading when it comes to spreading the message of Christ. Close quote. Now, Brett is a pilot, and he flies that route every week, multiple times. Now, I was not expecting that comment, so it was good to have a bit of personal confirmation. Clear skies and safe landings, Brett. Now, this brings to mind a video that I watched last year, a video by Joel Richardson, where he issued a challenge to any flat earther who was willing to put his belief to the test. Joel said that he was willing to fly with a flat earth believer from Santiago, Chile to Sydney, Australia, and back on that direct flight that I described above. If the earth is flat, that flight should take 44 hours one way. However, as I said before, Qantas says that the flight takes a little over 12 hours one way. The challenge goes like this. If the flight takes about 12 hours, the flat earther pays for both tickets. If the flight takes the amount of time that you would expect from a flat earth, about 44 hours, then Joel Richardson will pay for both tickets. If you're a flat earther, you can't lose, right? That's a pretty good challenge. Have any flat earthers shown enough courage to take up that challenge? Of course not. And that shows us what the flat earthers really are. Cowards. That's right, cowards. Then there are these yacht races that race around Antarctica. Here are the ones that I found. The Sunday Times Golden Globe race. Then there's the Velux 5 Oceans race. Then the Vendée Globe. The other one is the Volvo Ocean race that was formerly called the Whitbread Round the World race. And then the Clipper Round the World yacht race. All of those are just the results of a quick search. There might even be more round the world races, and they all race around Antarctica. Then someone who calls himself Tiger Dan 925 came forward with a heart-wrenching journey. The poor guy had been caught up in the lies of the Flat Earth movement, and he discovered that the Flat Earth map just could not be true. And since he was a man of integrity, he had to tell everyone that he had been wrong about the shape of the Earth. Here's the very beginning of his journey to the truth. And it's a YouTube video called Flat Earth Liars Exposed. Map. Antarctic isn't the outer perimeter. Now, I ran across that video in this article from 2016. It's titled, Flat Earthers Are Back, It's Almost Like the Beginning of a New Religion, from theguardian.com. And here are the first two paragraphs from that article. Quote, YouTube user TigerDan925 shocked his 26,000 followers recently by conceding a shocking point. Antarctica is a continent. It's not, as he previously thought, an ice wall that encircles the flat disk of land and water we call Earth. For most of us, that's not news, but TigerDan925's followers, like Galileo's 17th century critics, are outraged by his heresy. Welcome to the contentious universe of flat earthers, people who believe the notion of a globe-shaped world orbiting the sun is a myth. Close quote. But TigerDan925 was just getting started. He then tried to understand what was going on and why there was such a problem with what he was seeing. And this series of videos that he provides following documents his growing realization that the flat earth idea was a scam. So I'll read out the 5 videos. Flat earth could be a big deception. Liars scared. Map scam exposed. Flat earth deception part 2, exposing myself and others. Flat earth deception 3, flights. Flat earth deception 4, psyops and refutes. Flat earth deception 5, horizon, liars, and scams exposed. At the beginning of that series, you could tell that he wasn't ready to toss out all of the lies of the flat earthers. So he planned to do 10 videos digging into the research. But you'll notice that he couldn't get past video 5. There just wasn't anything more to do. The flat earth scam had been fully exposed for all the world to see, so we stopped there and went dark. TigerDan925, you are a man of integrity and honesty. You did the right thing when you found out that you were wrong, and I salute you for it. God bless you, brother. Now, I've taken more than 2,000 words to describe and debunk the foolishness of flat earthers. I really want to get into the mentality. I want to describe the mental disease that is afflicting these poor people that believe in this foolish scam. And I believe that some of the mentality can be described by an article sent to me by Mike in Idaho. It's titled, "The American Dunning-Kruger Epidemic, or Why Ignorant People Are So Sure They're Right." It's from Daisy Luther, the Organic Prepper, or theorganicprepper.com. Now, Mike from Idaho wasn't expecting me to talk about flat earthers. In his email to me, he mentioned other things. But he hit a nerve right when I was thinking about what to write. These things happen. So, let me take you through Daisy Luther's article and talk about this Dunning-Kruger effect. And let's start with a definition. Quote, "The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias in which individuals who are unskilled at a particular task believe themselves to possess above-average ability in performing the task. On the other hand, as individuals become more skilled in a particular task, they may mistakenly believe that they possess below-average ability in performing those tasks because they may assume that all others possess equal or greater ability. In other words, the miscalibration of the incompetent stems from an error about the self, whereas the miscalibration of the highly competent stems from an error about others." Close quote. And that is from the psychologyconcepts.com Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, back to to Daisy Luther's article. In her article, Daisy takes us through some practical examples. Quote, so a quote from her article, "Those who haven't lived like the rest of us are the ones shouting the loudest." Let's start with the current gun control debate. We have high school kids who think they are experts on policy, firearms, and the Constitution, smugly telling us how clueless they believe we are. We have movie stars who make millions from movies where they shoot people and who are protected by armed security guards, telling us that we law-abiding citizens who have guns are vicariously responsible for every school shooting that has ever happened. We have wealthy city dwellers who live in buildings with doormen telling the rest of us that we're nuts for wanting to protect ourselves. And all of these people who want to loudly tell the rest of us how to live our lives have one thing in common. They are completely out of touch with the real world. Close quote. Then, Daisy Luther mentions an article written in 2014 by David Dunning, the Dunning of Dunning-Kruger. That article was called, "We Are All Confident Idiots." It's from psmag.com. That's a long article, but there were some valuable insights and observations in it, so I will quote some of them. And there's a lot of quotes here, so I'm going to try to organize this a little more carefully. Quote 1. "In many cases, incompetence does not leave people disoriented, perplexed, or cautious. Instead, the incompetent are often blessed, quote unquote, with an inappropriate confidence buoyed by something that feels to them like knowledge." Close quote. Quote number 2. By the way, that first quote, you know people like this, right? Just saying. Quote number 2. "The American author and aphorist William Feather once wrote that being educated means being able to differentiate between what you know and what you don't. As it turns out, this simple ideal is extremely hard to achieve, although what we know is often perceptible to us. Sorry, I'm going to read that again. Although what we know is often perceptible to us, even the broad outlines of what we don't know are all too often completely invisible. To a great degree, we fail to recognize the frequency and scope of our ignorance." So let me repeat that one part that I was having trouble with. Even the broad outlines of what we don't know are all too often completely invisible. Okay, quote number I think this is quote number 3. "Like Jimmy Kimmel's victims," he was discussing a thing that Jimmy Kimmel did. Bankrupted respondents were particularly allergic to saying, "I don't know." Pointedly, when getting a question wrong, they were 67% more likely to endorse a falsehood than their peers were. Thus, with a head full of quote-unquote knowledge, they considered their financial literacy to be just fine. So let me repeat the important part. Bankrupted respondents, meaning those who went through bankruptcy, they lost their houses, were particularly allergic to saying, "I don't know." Do you know anybody like that? Just saying. Okay, next quote. An ignorant mind is precisely not a spotless empty vessel, but one that's filled with the clutter of irrelevant or misleading life experiences, theories, facts, intuitions, strategies, algorithms, heuristics, metaphors, and hunches that regrettably have the look and feel of useful and accurate knowledge. This clutter is an unfortunate byproduct of one of our greatest strengths as a species. We are unbridled pattern recognizers and profligate theorizers. Often our theories are good enough to get us through the day, or at least to an age when we can procreate. But our genius for creative storytelling, combined with our inability to detect our own ignorance, can sometimes lead to situations that are embarrassing, unfortunate, or downright dangerous, especially in a technologically advanced, complex, democratic society that occasionally invests mistaken popular beliefs with immense destructive power. See crisis, financial, war, Iraq. As the humorist Josh Billings once put it, "It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so." Ironically, one thing many people know about this quote is that it was first uttered by Mark Twain or Will Rogers, which just ain't so. So let me repeat the important part of that quote. It ain't what you know that gets you into trouble, it's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Quote number 5. I didn't number these. But something curious started happening as we began to look at the people who did extremely badly on our little quiz. It was a quiz that he gave to a bunch of people. By now, you may be able to predict it. These people expressed more, not less, confidence in their performance. In fact, people who got none of the items right often expressed confidence that matched that of the top performers. Indeed, this study produced the most dramatic example of the Dunning-Kruger effect that we had ever seen. When people looking only at the confidence of people getting 100% versus 0% right, it was often impossible to tell who was in which group. Close quote. People that got the test completely wrong were just as confident that they got it right as those that did get it completely right. That's interesting. Okay, the next quote. I think number 6, right? Some of our most stubborn misbeliefs arise not from primitive childlike intuitions or careless category errors, but from the very values and philosophies that define who we are as individuals. Each of us possesses certain foundational beliefs, narratives about the self, ideas about the social order, that essentially cannot be violated. To contradict them would call into question our very self-worth. As such, these views demand fealty from other opinions, and any information that we glean from the world is amended, distorted, diminished, or forgotten in order to make sure that these sacrosanct beliefs remain whole and unharmed. I just about lost my... Okay, and this is the important point. We hold these beliefs and philosophies and values, no matter how correct or incorrect. And to contradict them would call into question our very self-worth, and I would even say, our existence. So this is one of the reasons why people fight back so hard when they suffer from the flat earth mentality. The question is, do you love the truth enough to sacrifice yourself? But moving on. Okay, The next quote, I think number 7. The way we traditionally conceive of ignorance as an absence of knowledge leads us to think of education as its natural antidote. But, and we found this to be true, education can produce illusory confidence. Close quote. And this is an important point. Education can produce fantasy and illusion of confidence, or confidence that is an illusion, in something that is an illusion. Next quote. Quote 8. Okay. It is perhaps not so surprising to hear that facts, logic, and knowledge can be bent to accord with a person's subjective world view. After all, we accuse our political opponents of this kind of motivated reasoning all the time, but the extent of this bending can be remarkable, and I must, close quote, and I must confess that I've suffered from this myself. So I'll say it again. Facts, logic, and knowledge can be bent to accord with a person's, or to agree with a person's subjective worldview, or your personal worldview. Everybody does this. Everybody. The question is, are you willing to look at reality and say, and meaning the Bible is a part of reality, by the way, reality, and say, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice my personal subjective worldview and conform it to what is real and true. Okay. This is number, 9? Now, this next one is what Israel did after the intelligence failures of the 1973 Yom Kippur War. And I think I maybe talked about this before, but and for exactly the reason for this quote that follows. So, quote, but here is the real challenge. How can we learn to recognize our own ignorance and misbeliefs? To begin with, imagine that you are part of a small group that needs to make a decision about some matter of importance. Behavioral scientists often recommend that small groups appoint someone to serve as a devil's advocate, a person whose job is to question and criticize the group's logic. Sort of like, by the way, iron sharpens iron? It's in the Bible. Okay, back to the quote. While this approach can prolong group discussions, irritate the group, or be uncomfortable, the decisions that groups ultimately reach are usually more accurate and more solidly grounded than they otherwise would be. Close quote. Remember, we need to allow for disagreement among ourselves if we want the truth. And after all, the Mossad or Shin Bet or Shutei B'Tichon Klali, the security services that were responsible for the debacle of the Yom Kippur War, they realized they needed a devil's advocate group, and so they created one. Okay. Now for the last quote, I think it's number 10. Because it's so easy to judge the idiocy of others, it may be sorely tempting to think this doesn't apply to you. But the problem of unrecognized ignorance is one that visits us all. Close quote. And oh, that's the truth. If you can't recognize in yourself the ability, or the potential, or the possibility, or the probability that you are ignorant, well, if you can't see it, or you're not willing to see it, you might have a problem. Okay, moving on. Okay, that was a lot, but the article was long and it was packed with interesting thoughts and observations, and I hope that you got out of what I quoted as much as I did. Anyway, now that I think about what David Dunning said, I believe that a more appropriate title would be not "We are all confident idiots," but "We are all proud and confident idiots." It is our pride that seems to get in the way of our ability to recognize that we are wrong, and God hates pride. He calls it an abomination, and I must confess to having been abominable in the eyes of God far, far too often. But there's something else called the love of the truth. And this is from 2 Thessalonians 2, 11 to 12. Verse 10 talks about the love of the truth, and then those that don't have it. And then it goes on in verse 11, and for this cause God shall send them strong delusion that they should believe a lie, that they might that they all might be damned who believed not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. Again, 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 11 to 12. This flat earth movement is just one of the strong delusions that afflict us. In fact, it might be the least of those that are destroying us. If you believe in a flat earth then you are one of those that Paul is talking about. Unfortunately, all the other mental diseases afflicting our society are included here, like communism, racism, anti-Semitism, Islam, etc., etc. You'll certainly see some of it in the research section that I provided in the article. Utterly, absolutely insane. But let's add some more verses. This is Romans 1, verse 21. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Again, Romans 1:21. And here's another one. Quote, and this is 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 to 7. This know also, that in the last days perilous times shall come. For men shall be lovers of their own selves, covetous, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy, without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, incontinent, fierce, despisers of those that are good, traitors, heady, high-minded, lovers of pleasures more than lovers of God, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. From such turn away. For of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden with sins, led away with diverse lusts, ever learning, and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Close quote. Again, 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 to 7. And that last verse, verse 7, is the one really that we're talking about. Ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. Close quote. That is a horrifying situation. Anyway, it describes, and this ever learning and never able to come to the truth, knowledge of the truth, describes a host of pastors and Christians that I've had to deal with. The amount of dishonesty and corruption in our churches is suffocating. In fact, that whole list is a damning accusation towards Christians in North and South America and Europe. I am truly shocked at how awful we have become. I am constantly on the lookout for those who have integrity and love of the truth, and I find very few, so very few. But this was prophesied, so I need to try and temper my outrage with the knowledge that the last days were always going to be like this. And I'm always getting outraged. I'm just so sorry to see it. For instance, to my horror, I heard someone recently tell me that all the prophecies of the Bible were completed by AD 70. All of them. How utterly insane. That's called preterism, and it's a damnable heresy that will get you erased from the book of life, according to Revelation 22:19. And then there are those who believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. They have no proof. There is no verse that describes it, but they will curse your name and have cursed mine if you tell them, with proof, that we are going through the Great Tribulation. Then the anti-Semites also have the same flat earth mentality. They devoutly believe that all the problems of this world are caused by the Jews. And the Christian anti-Semites, like Rick Wiles, are worse in their denial that God has plans for Israel. And there's the communists and socialists that are just as bad. They somehow believe in an inherent goodness of mankind if we could just get rid of all those horrible capitalists. And the anarcho-capitalist libertarians aren't far behind, believing that no rules and no government will bring about utopia. Please, please spare us from the murderous utopians. In fact, let me borrow from my 2015 article again and ask a long-winded question. Do you believe that there's a secret Jewish conspiracy of Khazars? Do you believe that Islam worships the same God as Christianity? Do you believe that Islam is a religion of peace? Do you believe that the World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed due to terrorism or burning furniture and carpet? Do you believe the Jesuits are merely the intellectual arm of the Catholic Church? Something that I used to believe. Do you believe that Christianity and the theory of evolution are compatible? Do you believe that all Christians will be whisked away before the Antichrist comes? Do you believe the economy is doing great and our financial future is bright? Do you believe the Bible cannot possibly be true? And it's just, I hated writing that, just gave me the shivers. Do you believe Israel is the cause of all the conflict in the Middle East? Do you believe the earth is flat? If you can say yes to any of those questions, you suffer from a flat earth mentality. I could throw up all kinds of evidence to disprove all of the fallacies inherent in what you believe, but it won't matter to you. You believe what you believe, and you do not want to be confused with the facts. And I have decades of experience raging against the idiocy that humanity suffers from. Decades, and I have the scars to prove it. Of course, it is possible that you might hold some of the above lies or the saying yes to the above questions as true, but aren't sure. I hope that this is the case because it means that you might be willing to see the truth. But I'm not holding my breath. You see, as Mark Twain might have said, it is easier to fool people than to convince them that they have been fooled. Since the 1990s, I've been writing about the truth of Israel and what the Arab-Israeli conflict is really all about. But people would rather listen to the lies that they see in television or in their newspaper. Since 2011, I've been writing about the ever larger body of lies that have been afflicting our minds every single day and endangering our lives. But trying to get people to see the truth is harder than convincing them to believe in a lie. And deep down, I just don't get that. Yes, I understand that this is a part of God's judgment, as He turns us over to the insanity that results from a sinful life. But it is just so bizarre. I do not understand why people who seem to be able to tie their shoes, walk upright, and even drive a car, but find it too hard to see the stunningly obvious. And I finally realized that such people, no matter if they're a communist or a socialist or an anti-Semite or a flat earther, all of those people believe that the earth is flat, at least in character. Oh, it's possible that some of these people haven't gotten that far yet, but given time and space, I'm convinced that they will come to believe that the earth really is being carried about by a gigantic space turtle. Raise your hand if you get the illusion. Okay, ultimately our insanity will destroy us. In fact, I believe that it already has. I honestly do not think that even a massive dose of sudden sanity will save us from the destruction that is already rolling down upon us. The best that we can do is serve God and prepare for the worst. The best that we can do is serve God and prepare for the worst. Oh, and after everything falls apart, we'll also do our best to help the poor idiots with a flat earth mentality. We love all you guys. We just hope that you could wake up. Anyway, so let's get on to the research and analysis. This video, I will not have enough time to produce and send out this video. It will have to happen on Saturday. Now, this first one is, it begins, California senator introduces bill to kill free speech. Requires state-sanctioned fact-checkers to approve online content. This was shocking. If you want to know how the beast system rises, it rises like this. They will restrict your ability to speak. They will restrict the way that you buy and sell. They will limit your political choices. They will then take your children and brainwash them as they brainwash you. Pretty soon, a tattoo with the number 666 will seem like the most logical thing in the world. And I love how this article ends with a quote. Scratch a liberal, find a fascist. James Woods. Who knew that an actor could be so smart? And yes, I've heard. James Woods is a great guy. Now, the next one is actually a follow-on to the one above. Astonishing California bill would shut down free speech, require fact-checkers. John Rappaport's blog. Now, John Rappaport's a very interesting guy. The core of the previous article is this one. by John Rappaport. How could a moron like Richard Pan get to be so evil? When I looked at his bio, I discovered why. Harvard. I'm sure that there are other reasons, but that is probably the biggest one. Some of the worst morons come out of Harvard, and he's about my age, so I understand a little bit of the indoctrination that brainwashed him. This is so sick that it's hard to believe. I mean, it really is so sick that it's hard to believe. And I want a baseball bat and permission from God to bash heads. But God doesn't hand out permission like that, so I must sit here and fume at the evil being perpetrated before our very eyes. And then John Rappaport ends with these lines. If, 10 or 15 years ago, someone told you a bill like SB 1424 was going to come before a state legislature for a vote, you would have thought you were listening to a Hollywood pitch for a sci-fi movie script. But now it's real. It's here. Believe it. Crush it. My response is, unfortunately, you can't crush it. Why? Because the reason why it is here in the first place is due to the sin within our churches and what I've talked about above, the flat earth mentality. I've seen this sin firsthand, and it is vile and horrifying. And I saw an example of it just recently. There is no hope for America and the world as long as the wolves rule the church. Then there's just one more article I included. New California bill would eliminate free speech, require online fact checkers. This is Mac Slavo's take on this horrendous piece of foul legislation from shtf.com. And who knew that such a benign looking guy, this Richard Pan, could be so diabolical? I mean, he looks like a great guy. The next one's is called Gold and Silver, High Quality Store of Value, Fragile Nature of Currencies, YouTube. There is a chart in that YouTube that shows the change in the interest payments that oil companies are having to shell out. In 2013, the interest payments were $5.7 billion, just the interest payments. In 2017, they were $15.4 billion. That is 3 times a dramatic increase in debt service, just interest payments, over just 4 years. Guys, gals, oil companies are in trouble, and that means you are in trouble. Lots of trouble. How will you get to your job when the cost of getting to your job is too high? And will you take the choice of yet again not paying off your mortgage to fill your gas tank, which is how we crashed the last time, or part of how. Anyway, the next one is mainstream anti-Semitism in Europe is at a level not seen since World War II, from Quartz. I love how this article says, quote, the rise in the populist movement in Europe has been stoked by anti-immigration sentiment, mostly from right-wing parties, close quote. It's as if populism isn't democracy. People like the writer of this piece are elitists who do not want democracy. They hate it. They only want democracy if the people choose what they want. Remember this James Woods quote, scratch a liberal, find a fascist, and then we add every time. It's the truth. So when Europe lashes back at the leftists who are stealing the freedoms of Europeans and bringing in waves of barbarians, it is the left who is giving the anti-Semites a chance to rise. So you can lay the blame of this rise of anti-Semitism on the left. They did this. Unfortunately, this doesn't change the fact that the Jews are in big trouble in Europe. Very big trouble. And the only place of safety for them is Israel or the U.S. for now. And please, to my dear Jewish friends in the U.S., could you please stop it with the tendency to be left-wing? Being left-wing is stupid, and you're smarter than that. Yes, I know that Judaism has a soft heart that is full of love for your fellow man. I experienced it myself in Israel. But there is such a thing as being so soft that you become the drool of the drooling idiots. British Jews, on the other hand, have woken up to how awful the left is, especially the people like Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party. That disgusting anti-Semite has woken up the Jewish people in Britain like no one else. Quote, his followers and supporters openly share on social media some of the most malevolent Holocaust denial, and international Jewish banking conspiracies reminiscent of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Some of this is sometime even condoned by Corbyn himself. It leads us to believe that this normalization of Jew hatred has reached the highest levels, said Cantor, close quote. And Corbyn is a part of a movement responsible for a 34% increase in anti-Semitic physical assaults in Britain in 2017. Again, another quote. Corbyn has systematically failed to take a strong enough line on anti-Semitism, aligning himself with people and groups that hold openly anti-Semitic views and seek to spread their offensive messages throughout our society. When Corbyn consistently refuses to seriously acknowledge his party's anti-Semitism problem, it becomes clear to many that anti-Semitism is acceptable, said Cantor. Close quote. And this last quote resonates with what I have been seeing more and more everywhere on the internet. Quote, Cantor said, if in previous years we saw different types of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism of the far right, anti-Semitism of the far left, and an anti-Semitism masked as anti-Israel, now it has transformed more openly into a classic anti-Semitism. There has been an increase in open, unashamed, and explicit hatred directed against Jews. The Jew as exploiter, the Jew as killer, the Jew as banker. It is like we have regressed 100 years. Close quote. This insane hatred needs to stop. It really does. If it doesn't, it will destroy Europe. Of course, it won't stop, so Europe will be destroyed. Anti-Semitism is always a precursor for destruction. Always. All you have to do is read your history. This next one is interesting. Man who was raised by wolves in a cave admits he's disappointed with human life, from the Mirror Online. It is a heartbreaking commentary on how awful we are. We are cruel. We are indifferent to the suffering of others. We don't care about each other. We are selfish. And when someone is in need, we tell them to be warmed and filled, but don't raise a finger to provide for their needs. And I know as I write this that I am deficient in this area too. So I say to those of you who believe that their country or society is basically good, is it really? To paraphrase Jesus in Matthew 12:39, we are an evil and adulterous generation. This next one is very interesting. Syphilis outbreaks predicted by Google searches, tweets, The Washington Times. You may not realize this, but you are predictable. We all are. And this article provides proof that we are predictable. That predictability is also proof that we don't have as much free will as you think. And it would be interesting to sit down and do a study of this hard to pin down concept. We will always be a slave to our own desires, and if there is any free will, it is in the desires that we choose. I desire God. How about you? The next one is, in 2020, German society will start collapsing, from GEFIRA, or Gefira. This is a horrendous catastrophe in the making, starting at year 2020. Here's the last paragraph of this piece. Quote, in conclusion, Germany's problems will only start to accelerate after 2020, when every succeeding year, the working age population will be reduced by 400,000 people. By 2028, this number will amount to 750,000. The disappearance of the German nation will entail the next systemic crisis. And that, close quote, and that, my friends, is bad. Now here's a YouTube. It's Will Indonesia Be the New Muslim Powerhouse? From VisualPolitik EN, YouTube. Quote, no, it's not a quote, my description. An interesting and sympathetic video about a country that has grown in presence here in Taiwan after the diplomatic explosion with the Philippines. A lot of Indonesian workers are here, and it's unsettling to see Muslim headscarves on the Metro Rapid Transit here in Taipei, especially since I've lived with Islamic terrorism in Jerusalem for 15 years. The question that this video raises is whether Indonesia will stay the course toward a moderate secularist government, or will it allow the Islamic radicals to take over? If the radicals take over, and it looks like it might, China will have a huge threat to its trade routes through Southeast Asia. Indonesia could block that trade very, very easily. So China isn't going to be happy with an Islamic Republic of Indonesia. However, the biggest problem will be the Christians living in Indonesia. We are being persecuted by the radicals there, and it will only get worse when they take power. So pray for our brothers and sisters there. Now this is the next 3 entries are under the category of the corruption and the military takeover to solve it. And I have a hard time believing that we aren't going to have a military takeover. And there are people that are hinting that this is in the works. So anyway, let's get into these articles. Judge Janine is actually a YouTube. Judge Janine to GOP, step up and govern. The Republicans are gutless wonders. They're corrupt, they're venal, and disgusting. Most of them should be in jail. And the only thing worse than a Republican is a Democrat. The next one is also a YouTube. It's Ghost Voters, New Proof of Election Fraud. I couldn't hardly believe it. There are 3.5 million fake voter registrations in America, and they are voting for Democrats in quote-unquote marginal counties. Close races are being swung in the Democrats' favor in these elections by these ghost voters. When will the corruption end? Here's another YouTube. The secret behind Mueller's latest desperation move. All the Democrats in Washington, D.C. need to be thrown in jail and then investigated. Most of the Republicans should join them. The leadership of the FBI and the DOJ should also go to jail. In fact, they should halt the entire they should take the entire population of Washington, D.C., throw them in jail, and then let out those who are clearly innocent. Better yet, do you remember that movie Escape from New York? I never saw it, but I know the storyline, where they walled off New York City and threw in the criminals and let no one out. Well, that would be perfect for Washington, D.C. Wall the place off and shoot anyone who tries to leave. Well, at least we can fantasize, right? Then we're talking about, there's one entry for the Matthew 24/7 category I have. Jack Buckby. It's a YouTube. Jack Buckby, UK MP Naz Shah is an extremist and must resign now. For those of you who are not familiar with Britain or parliamentary democracies, you might have a bit of a learning curve to overcome with this video. But there is one thing that should be completely obvious to everyone. Wherever Muslims move in and take over an area, they will produce the most vile and evil politicians to ever walk planet Earth. And no, I'm not engaging in hyperbole here. Please remember that Islam was the only religion that Hitler loved, aside from his own vicious form of paganism. Naz Shah is such an appropriate name for such a foul and evil politician. After all, she represents everything that is truly Nazi. Now into the Gog and Magog section, and it is a Wall Street Journal article called Israel Caught in U.S.-Russia Rift Over Syria. This is a difficult and dangerous position for Israel to be in, and ultimately, Israel will pay a horrifying price for the actions that America takes when Gog and Magog arrives. I wish that I could save Israel from the results of this, but well, we'll see it. The next one is under the Israel section. It's UK funding textbooks that teach children to blow themselves up. Isn't it great that the UK is making sure that every Palestinian boy and girl has their chance to be taught that murdering Israelis is good? Isn't that wonderful? And did your sarcasm meter just blow up? Okay. Disgusting. Next one is a YouTube. Disgusting. Media implies Israel murdered Syrian children. Hey, It's the mainstream media trying to claim that Israel murders kids without specifically saying so in words. They're just being a little creative with the layout of titles and pictures. Isn't it, journalists? Dirtbags. But I repeat myself. Well, that was the ShockCast for Friday the 13th, 2018, of this month of April. I'm sorry that it's such a load of insanity on your mind, but I'm hoping that it has give you some food for thought. My hope is that you have a great weekend, and that when you go to church, that the words of your pastor will ring in your ears and reach into your heart and give you something to work on in your life. May you be blessed as you serve God with the best of your ability. I will see you next week, and I've been John Little, and this is the ShockCast. Goodbye.